Good day everyone. We will discuss about adding a transparent data encryption TDE enabled user database to always on availability group. Let's get started. I'll be using this particular environment for this video. We have three replicas, JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3 as far as this availability group is concerned. JBS AG1 and JBS AG2 is in East US region, and JBS AG3 is in Korea Central region. JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3 are configured as in synchronous commit replicas as far as this availability group is concerned. The availability group name will be JBS AG, and this availability group uses the underlying cluster called JBS Wiki cluster. And the database right now in this particular AG is JBS Wiki. JBS Wiki database is currently added to this particular AG, and the listener name would be JBS APP. So let's go to the primary replica. So in our case, primary replica is JBS AG1. So let's get into JBS AG1, and let's look at the always on availability group dashboard. So if we look at it here, what we are able to see is like as updated earlier, we have a database called JBS Wiki added to this availability group called JBS AG. And if we can see here, the availability mode that is configured for JBS AG1, JBS AG2, and JBS AG3 is synchronous commit. So now what I'll do is like I will let me close this availability group, and then I will first open this particular query window, and then what I'll do is like I will create two databases, and then I will enable TDE for these two databases, and then I will try adding these databases to the availability group JBS AG. So let's look at the AG configuration one more time. So we have these three replicas, and also the database that is present in this AG is JBS Wiki. And we have the listener configured as JBS APP. So let me create this database here. I'm connected to JBS AG1, which is our primary replica. So let me execute that. So the database is created. Now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create the master key that will be like used for the TDE. So let's execute it. Here in this case, I'm using this password. It is very much required that you remember the password, because if you don't have this password, then it is going to be very, very tough for moving the database back up from this server to any other server. So the idea behind transparent data encryption is that once we configure TDE for any database, and now let's consider we have the backups taken for this database, and also like the MDF and LDF we have it. Now when we try to either restore the database back up onto a different server, or we try to attach this MDF LDF. So right now it is the database is present in this instance. Let's say we detach it, or in case if the SQL server goes down, we will have this MDF and LDF file, that is your data file and a log file. You will be able to attach that. But TDE, if TDE is enabled, without enabling TDE on the instance where you are trying to either attach the database or restore the database backup where you have TDE configured, you will not be able to restore it onto a different server or attach the database onto a different server until and unless you create the master key on the other server based on the server where you are basically bringing in the backup or the MDF and LDF file. So basically what the procedure would be, wherever you have this master key creator, you basically have to back up that certificate, and then you need to restore that in order to restore this database onto a different instance. So what I'll do is like I will create the master key. Let me execute it one more time, and here you will basically see that we are getting this error stating like there is already a master key. So that means like only one master key can be created on an instance. So that's something that you need to keep in your mind. Now what I'll do is like I will create the required certificate here. Here I'm creating the certificate with a name JB underscore TDE underscore certificate. So let me create it here. This is created. Now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create a database encryption key. So what you need to keep in mind is like The master key is created at the instance level, and the database encryption key will be created for each user database. So I'm using the command use JB underscore DB, which is a database that we just created, and then I'm creating a database encryption key, and the algorithm uses AES underscore 256. And then if you see here, I'm encrypting it with the certificate that we have created, which is JB underscore TDE underscore certificate. So let me create that. So this is created. So we have this message here, which basically tells that the certificate used for encrypting the database encryption key has not been backed up. You should immediately back up the certificate and the private key associated with the certificate. If the certificates ever becomes unviable, or if you must restore or attach the database on another server, you must have backups of both the certificate and the private key, or you will not be able to open the database. So as I told you earlier, in case if you want to restore this database onto a different server, the key is like you need to have the certificate, and then you need to configure TDE there based on this certificate. That is when you will be able to restore this database backup or attach your MDF and LDF if it is available. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to enable encryption on this particular database, JB underscore DB. The command is alter database, JB underscore DB, which is the database name, and set encryption on. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another table, another database. So I just want to make sure like we are creating multiple database, and then show you the procedure so that you will not have any confusion later, because if we just work on one database, then there might be a confusion whether we need to create the master key twice. That's the reason I'm doing this demo for two databases. Again, the master key is created only once, and that is based on the SQL Server instance. And as far as the database encryption key is concerned, it is going to be per user database. So now I'm going to create the second database, which is called JBS underscore DB. If you look at it here, I'm not creating the master key. I'm just creating the database encryption key. And remember, we are using the same certificate that we have created before, which is JB underscore TDE underscore certificate. Let me create that. We get the same message. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to enable encryption for the newly created database. That's done. Now what I'll do is like I will check the status of the encryption as far as this particular these two databases are concerned. So let's execute it, and what we can see is like the encryption state is 3 for JB underscore DB, JBS underscore DB, and TemDB, and the encryption state description is encrypted. So if you see, we basically have close to like 3 user databases. Yeah, let's refresh that. So we have these 3 user databases, and what we are seeing from this output is like only these 2 databases have the TDE enabled, and not for this particular database. And also we do not run any query on the TemDB, but what happens is like as soon as you enable TDE for one user database, TemDB also gets the encryption gets enabled automatically, because when you need to do certain things as far as the temporary database, that is your TemDB is concerned. For example, when you're executing a query on an encrypted user database, it will definitely use the TemDB in certain scenarios, and in that case it needs to be encrypted as well. So that's the reason by default, once you have an encrypted database, TemDB is also gets encrypted. Now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to back up the certificate JB underscore TD underscore certificate, so that I'll be able to use that on other servers. So now we know like this is the primary replica for JBS Wiki database. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to back up the certificate here, and then restore it on JBS AG2 and JBS AG3 as well. Let's back up the certificate. So I'm going to take the backup of this certificate to a location called C drive temp folder. And if I look at the location, I don't have anything there. So let me start the backup, and then let's look at the location again now. So if you see here, we are able to see the certificate backup and also the private key associated with it. Now what we'll do is like we will copy this 2 things and then move it across to JBS AG2 and JBS AG3, and then we will paste these 2 things there, and then we will enable TDE on those instances as well. So we have a copy there. So let me delete it and then let me paste it here. Now what I'll do is like I will do the same thing for JBS AG3 as well. Okay, so we have several other files. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete the existing file there, and then I will paste these two files. That is the certificate backup file and then the private key associated with it. So it is now copied. So now what I'm going to do, store the certificate on, let's create the certificate on JBS AG2 and JBS AG3 based on the backup that we have created. So right now we are in JBS AG3. Let's connect to JBS AG2 because that is where I'm going to create first. So let me go to JBS AG2. I'm going to create the master key here. So the master key is created, and now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to create a certificate called JB underscore TD underscore certificate, and the backup for this certificate file is this one, which is in C colon temp, which we manually copied, and this is the private key, and the password is key here. So whoever gets a hold of the certificate and private key, if they don't have the proper password, then they will not be able to create it. So in our case, we know the password, so we were able to create it without any issues. Now what we'll do is like we will do the same thing on JBS AG3 as well. So let's connect to JBS AG3, and then if let's create the master key on the JBS AG3 server, and then let's create the certificate JB underscore TD underscore certificate using the certificate file and the private key. So this is also created now. So now what we'll do is like we will try adding this database JBS DB and JBDB into always on availability group, and then we will see how is it going. Now let's go to the Object Explorer. Let's refresh the availability group. Now what we'll do is like we will go to this availability database and then click on add database here. Then let's maximize this and then click on next. And then if we see here, what we are seeing is like the JB underscore DB database and JBS underscore DB database is not letting us to enable always on availability group because it basically gives a status as does not meet prerequisite. So let's click on that. And what I'm able to see is like I'm getting a message that this database lacks a full database backup. Before you can add this database to an availability group, you must perform a full database backup. So the problem right now is like there are two issues here. The first one tells like this wizard cannot add a database containing a database encryption key to an availability group. Use the create or alter availability group Transact-SQL statement instead, because what it is basically telling is like you need to use the TSQL query to do this. And the second issue is like it basically tells like there is no full database backup. So what I'll do is like let me create the full database backup, full and transaction log backup for these two databases, and then let's see what happens. Let's refresh the always on availability group wizard. Yep. So here I'm going to create it in C drive temp jbdb.bak. This is a test machine, so I'm just doing it just like that. But in case if it is going to be a production machine, then you guys will know like where to take the backups, whether it is going to be on the local drive or the network drive and things like that. But since this is a demo, I'm doing it in C drive temp folder. Yep. I will take a transaction log backup. I will change the backup type to transaction log and then click on OK. The backup is taken. I will do the same thing for JBS DB as well. So let's back up, remove, let's do the backup in C drive temp JBS underscore db.bak, and once the full backup is done, I will take a transaction log backup as well. Let's back up. change this to transaction log. Let's remove it and then add C drive temp /jbs underscore db dot trn. Okay, so the transaction log backup is also completed. Let's go to the C drive temp. So right now we are in JBS AG3. So let's go to this C drive temp and we can see the backup files here. JBDB full backup, transaction log backup, JBS underscore DB full backup and transaction log backup. So what I'll do, I will do the same thing. Let me put it across to the temp folder here on the JBS AG3 so that I will be able to restore the backups from the local location instead of doing it from the network. Since it is very small, I'm just doing it. But yeah, in your case, whatever is preferable, you can do that. I'm going to JBS AG2 C drive temp folder and doing the same thing. The backup files are present there. So now what we'll do is like we will try refreshing that. So this time we are getting a message stating like the status is like we will not be able to add these two databases because it contains a database encryption key. So this is the message that we are seeing. The other message which basically spoke about full database backup is no longer there because it just now took the backup and completed it. Yep. So let's cancel this and then let's do it from the TSQL. Okay, so let's close all these query windows. I don't need that anymore. And then what I'll do is like I will restore the database backup that we performed on JBS AG2 and JBS AG3. Let's refresh it. Let's make sure the database is not there. And then let's restore the database there. So we know that we have copied the files onto C drive temp. So let's go there. These are all easy things that we can do. The only thing is like if the database size increases, that is when the actual challenge comes in. So this is done. The most important thing here, as you guys know, it should be restored using no recovery here. So let's do that. So the restore for JB underscore DB is completed. Let's do the same thing for JBS DB as well, the second database. Let's go to C drive temp again. Here we go. We have these two backups. Let's select that and then let's go to the option and then change it to no recovery and then let's restore it. The restore is completed on JBS AG2. Looks good. Let's do the same thing on JBS AG3 as well. So let's refresh it. There are no databases there other than JBS Wiki. So let's do the same thing there as well. So the delay that we are seeing here for JBS AG3 because it is basically located in Korea Central, which is geographically separated from East US. That's the reason we are seeing some sort of a delay. So going to select JBDB first. I'm going to restore it with no recovery. Let's restore it. Yes, it's completed. Let's do the same thing for JBS DB as well. Select the device, go to C drive temp folder. And then select JBS DB and JBS DB transaction log backup. Go to the options. Change it to no recovery. These are very small things, but very, very critical. If we restore it with recovery, then we will have to drop it and then recreate all over again. So now what I'm going to do is like I'm going to first add the database onto the availability group. That is, I will first add JBS, that is JBDB and JBSDB onto JBS AG1, and then I will do next on the same thing on JBS AG2 and JBS AG3. Let's start with JBS AG1. Okay, so I'm going to run this command, alter availability group, JBS AG, that's the availability group, and add database JB underscore DB. So let's execute that first and wait for it to complete. It is completed. Now let's do the same thing for JBS underscore DB database as well. Yep, it is completed now. Let's do a refresh here. These two databases are added here. Let's do a refresh here as well. So it is showing us synchronized. Now what we'll do is like we will do the same thing. That is like we will add the databases for those two databases on the secondary, which is basically your JBS AG2 and JBS AG3. Let's click on a new query window. And then if you see here, what I'm basically doing is like I'm going to execute this command in the secondary, the first secondary, which is JBS AG2, alter database JB underscore DB, set HADR availability group is equal to JBS AG. So let's execute it. This is done. And let's do it for JBS underscore DB as well. This is done as well. So what we'll do now, we will refresh JBS AG2. And then see the database, it shows us synchronized. And let's go to the availability group here and look at the database. We have those two databases. Let's do the same thing on JBS AG3 as well. And once that is done, I think like we are done with this activity. So connected to the second secondary, which is JBS AG3. Let's add the first database. This is done. Let's do the second database now. This is done as well. Let's refresh JBS AG3. The delay is clearly visible because if I ping JBS AG3 from JBS AG1 or JBS AG2, you will see like there is a latency of like close to 180 to 200 milliseconds. So let's look at the database here. The database is JBDB and JBSDB is in synchronized status. And when I look at the availability group here, let's look at the availability databases. And if you see here, you will have, you are having JB underscore DB and JBS underscore DB. Last thing, what we'll do is like we will look at the availability group dashboard once to make sure everything is intact. So let's click on show dashboard. Yep. And if you see, now we are able to see that we have three databases for availability group JBS AG. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Jai Hind.